Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read you what Congresswoman Maxine Waters stated, what the judge stated, and what could possibly, and talk about what could possibly happen very quickly. So, judge denies Chauvin defense's motion for a mistrial, but says Representative Maxine Waters' comments, quote, could lead to this whole case being overturned on appeal. So, one Democratic Congresswoman, because of statements made, could lead to an appeal. Quote, I'll give it to you that Congresswoman Waters may have given you an appeal that could lead to this whole case being overturned, Cahill said. And this is the actual quote. So, Congresswoman Waters stated, and this is abiding by YouTube policies. I will give you the actual Associated Press and Yahoo News quotes. I'll give you the Wikipedia entry or the Wikipedia site on controversies during the Floyd protests that lists 19 lives lost associated and $1 to $2 billion in property damage. So ever since the Capitol, Democrats have said, okay, Trump's words and the words from Republicans, and those words have compelled people to commit horrible things. Prior to that fateful day and that horrible, tragic day, you had $1 to $2 billion in property damage and 19 lives lost, according to Wikipedia. I'll give you the link, so you'll get that link. Yes, most were peaceful, but that's not really a rebuttal to. You can have. I mean, how many black-owned businesses, Asian-owned businesses, Latino-owned businesses, businesses and corporations owned by people of color? How many of those enterprises were, completely destroyed? That's not a question that is easily answered by CNN or I don't know. I don't even know if there's even a way of finding out. Okay? Because there should be a way of finding out the exact number. But you had primarily peaceful protests where you might have a certain small percentage of people who are then leading to $1 to $2 billion worth of property damage, according to Wikipedia, and 19 lives lost, according to Wikipedia. When you talk about Congresswoman Maxine Waters and what she stated, quote, we've got to stay on the street and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. That's the quote that could overturn the decision by the jury. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business. So, you're talking about. So the judge denied the motion for a mistrial, but did say that it could lead to a whole new. The verdict being overturned on appeal. You're not going to get. See, this is the Democratic Party. Now, my thoughts on this are the following. I'll put the link below. I support law enforcement. I'm a part of the 1199 Foundation supporting the California Highway Patrol, and I support law enforcement throughout the country. And I think that there are horrible atrocities that do take place. That doesn't mean every police officer, every law enforcement official should be painted with the same brush. God forbid, if you need them, they're going to be there for you. Or, you look at all of these horrible things that have taken place, it's oftentimes people of color within these stories that are calling the police. So, and then something tragic takes place. Everybody, people of color, white people, everyone needs the police, fire department. This is not like you cannot paint everybody or every lawyer or doctor or accountant or financial advisor, or you can't, there are things that take place within industries that are horrendous. There are people that commit, horrible things. you can't then say this is a systemic issue that you need to paint every single police officer with the same brush. Granted, that the African American and black community does face more police brutality than other groups within the United States of America. That is an issue that should have been fixed with Eric Garner. I talked about that in my segment below, so you can see the segment below where I talk about the George Floyd trial and the Chauvin trial, and I talk about, I believe that George Floyd was murdered. So I don't believe, I understand the rebuttal that, well, there were narcotics, well, this, well, that. For every, for example, in Minneapolis, and there's something going on in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. It's a Democratic-run state. The police officer who wanted to use the taser, but then went for the obviously, didn't, went the Glock. Perhaps she mistook it. She obviously mistook it for the taser. That's wrong. She should face, the full legal extent of consequences, because that's not what the vast majority of law enforcement officials would do. You can't just simply say, oops, sorry. Yes, if you're resisting arrest, if he wasn't resisting arrest, would he be alive? Very likely, almost certainly. But that's not a rebuttal in my mind. If George Floyd wasn't resisting arrest, would he be alive? Almost certainly. But that's not a rebuttal also in my mind. The vast majority of law enforcement officials do their job, and they deal with the most horrendous people. They deal with the most violent, dangerous, you have the story of just the horrendous murder of Darian Jarrett, the New Mexico police officer who was, his life was taken from him. He had 3 children. I'm not sure. I think 1 on the way. And so the Democrats aren't bringing up Darian Jarrett. There's hypocrisy in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, but again, you can't paint all police officers with the same brush, because they risk their lives, and they might not come home to their families, God forbid, because, with Darian Jarrett, if you see the video of what took place, this man is, God bless him, a hero, and he, gave his life, or his life was taken from him, I should say, when he was trying to protect people within his city. That's what police officers do. Do I believe George Floyd was murdered? Yes. Do I think that Congresswoman Maxine Waters, what she stated, was horrendous? Yeah, it wasn't good at all. And Nancy Pelosi, of course, Democrats don't ever take responsibility for the things they do or they say. It's always Trump inciting and compelling people to do horrible things, and it's never, hey, you had $1 to $2 billion in property damage by a small percentage of protests that were primarily peaceful, and you had 19 lives lost. So I don't care what percentage of the protests. If you say things like, confrontational in any context, you're going to create a huge problem politically. Quote, we've got to stay on the streets and get more active. Well, the Congresswoman knows there's $1 to $2 billion in property damage. We've got to get more confrontational. She knows that 19 lives have been lost. We've got to make sure that they know we mean business. Okay, getting more confrontational. Pelosi says, well, she talked about it in the manner of the civil rights movement. But who is Martin Luther King Jr.? Who is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in this? If Democrats and media and many activists and many people on the left say, well, this is the new civil rights movement, then who is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Who is Malcolm X? Who is Medgar Evers? Who are the leaders of this new civil rights movement? There are no leaders that you can point to. So it's not the same. And if I'm wrong, well, the comment section is going to be there won't be any comment section, but I could be wrong because this is a very touchy subject and the topic is very difficult to discuss. But I believe George Floyd was murdered. You can't put your knee on someone's neck and, even if he has narcotics, even if he was resisting arrest, just like you can't reach for the Glock when you wanted the taser, which is one of the many reasons why I don't think you should use that, why Glocks should not be used. But anyway, that's a whole other story. I just, especially if it feels like the taser itself, but that's, it shouldn't have been on her right side. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Give me your thoughts below, or actually don't give me your thoughts because there won't be a, I do believe that Chauvin, that he murdered George Floyd. But now, because of one Congresswoman and a Democratic Party, of course, and Pelosi, that, of course, will never, like when there was another Congresswoman who made a statement that was just purely anti-Semitic, instead of addressing that specific person, Democrats condemned all forms of, prejudice and never really actually addressed and condemned the anti-Semitic statement itself. But that's the way Democrats roll. They don't actually ever take a stand. You will never see any Democrat kneeling during the national anthem, but they will take advantage politically of every single possible all political utility involved with kneeling, where activists or athletes are kneeling during the flag. Democrats will take advantage of that politically, but they will never in a million years kneel during the flag, during the national anthem. Biden, Pelosi will never kneel, but they will pretend that they have a different view of that protest than President Trump. They have essentially the same view as President Trump, just expressed in a very different way. And I think that President Trump shouldn't have stated his opposition to that in the manner that he did. Give me your thoughts. Actually, don't give me your thoughts below, because I'm going to go ahead and the comment section will be off, disabled for this segment. But because of one Congresswoman's statements, the entire trial could be overturned on appeal. The verdict of the trial could be overturned on appeal. And you have Democrats who were pretty oblivious to the $1 to $2 billion in property damage and the 19 lives lost by people who take that word confrontation to mean a different thing. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe. Actually, don't give me your thoughts below. I apologize. I keep saying that, but I'm going to disable the comments.